What up, nerds? Today we'll be taking a look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, one of the most anticipated games of 2022. So was it worth the wait? Did it live up to the hype? Let's get into the review and find out. So let's start with the positives. One of the best things about the Pokemon series in general is that the traditional formula is still there. Catching and discovering Pokemon, beating the evil team, and conquering gyms in the Elite Four has always worked for Game Freak. That's been the staple formula for mainline Pokemon games since day one. Scarlet and Violet just expand on those qualities with an open world, making the journey feel like an actual journey. Speaking of open world, the world is almost as big as Kim Kardashian's fat dump truck. It's absolutely massive and filled to the brim with various landscapes, towns, cities, items, and roaming Pokemon. It's so big that I don't even know if I explored everything, despite putting in over 100 hours into this game. Next, let's talk about the Pokemon. The new Pokemon designs are pretty solid. Aside from new species we've never seen before, some old Pokemon are given new forms and evolutions, as well as past and future paradox forms, giving new flavor to its variety of existing species. Sure, there are some shitters in there, but I'd say a majority of the new Pokemon are visually appealing, and a lot of them are worth using during gameplay, alongside returning Pokemon from previous generations, giving you a huge variety for team building. There are so many good choices that I genuinely had a hard time deciding what I wanted to use during my playthrough. For me, I mainly wanted to focus on new Pokemon with different type compositions, and even that was still hard. There was a lot of decision making and sacrifices to be made, but eventually I ended up with this. Sure, it's an overwhelming process of deciding what Pokemon you want to use, but at the same time, having so many different options for team building is one of the best parts about Pokemon. It gives you the freedom to customize your gameplay experience and how you want to approach the game. Next, let's talk about the story, or stories as I should say. Players are given the liberty to explore the game at their own pace. There are three main storylines in the game. Victory Road, where you typically face against 8 gym leaders and the Pokemon League. Starfall Street, where you fight the evil team known as Team Star. And the Path of Legends, where you fight Titan Pokemon in order to obtain special herbs known as Herba Mysticas. Completing each of the stories grants you different rewards. Beating gyms lets higher level Pokemon obey you. Beating members of Team Star gives you LP and various TMs. And beating Titan Pokemon grant you new movement options for your box legendary, all of which are valuable, especially the movement options. Being able to ride, swim, climb, and glide makes exploration and traversing the world infinitely more enjoyable than running like a bum ass on your feet. As for the soundtrack, it's a hit or miss. A majority of the overworld music is either lame or unmemorable. Like as of writing this review, I can't remember a single theme from a town, city, or wild area. The battle themes on the other hand are on a whole nother level. You can tell Game Freak knew what they were doing when it came to the battle themes. Most of the battle themes are high energy, with a combination of upbeat and fast instrumentals. Some of my personal favorites include Arven's theme, the Elite Four, the Wild Encounters in Area Zero, and the Legendary Quartet. And lastly, let's talk about competitive battling. If you're interested in the competitive scene, or if you just want to beat your friends, making a strong team is pretty easy and accessible. All you need is money and you're Gucci. All battle items and stat enhancers can be bought with money, which is easily obtainable during the endgame. If you want to know more, just watch Philly Beats You's money making guide. As long as you have money, you can make any Pokemon the best it can be. I would talk about multiplayer, but I never touched it. But I can imagine it being fun playing together with others. And yeah, those are all the good things I have to say about the games. And even though the games are fun, they still have major issues and so many missed opportunities that can't be ignored. Just like always, Pokemon is infamous for having boring, lackluster stories. Sure, the rewards are good, but the stories themselves were either boring or predictable. I enjoyed the Path of Legends quite a bit, but post-game though, that shit is on a whole different ballpark. Once you beat the 3 main stories, there's one final story arc. I'm not gonna spoil what happens. All I'm gonna say is that it genuinely caught me by surprise, and it made me appreciate this game's lore. But even so, I shouldn't have to suffer 99% of boring-ass dialogue in order to get to the good part. And despite the game attempting to have an emphasis on its story, there's no voice acting. Oftentimes you'll see characters moving their mouths, but no words coming out. It makes you wonder why the developers even bothered animating the mouths if they're not going to even verbally speak. I might as well be playing the game on fucking mute. I just don't understand how the most successful media franchise of all time can't even put voice acting in their own games. It would make the game feel infinitely more immersive and engaging. Gym challenges suck ass. For those who don't know, you have to play these mini-games first before you can fight the gym leaders, such as pushing a giant olive through an obstacle course, or playing Where's Waldo or some shit, and every single one felt like a waste of time. They're way too easy, and they're not fun. I just wanted to get them over with so I could just fight the gym leaders. Speaking of gym leaders, there's no level scaling. Since the game has no level scaling, you can't truly start anywhere. Like, yeah, you can choose to fight the last gym leader first, but his team will probably rape your ass because your squad is underleveled, so you can't really start there. And if you do manage to beat him, the other gym leaders are just going to be easy breezy titty squeezy. Same goes for the team star leaders, as well as the Titan Pokemon. You can't really fight them in any order you want, so it's a lose-lose situation. I don't think many people would find that fun, especially for an open world game. It goes against exploration, which makes progression somewhat linear. Next, let's talk about sandwiches. I never even touched sandwiches during my playthrough. For one, you have to make the sandwiches, which is slow and boring. It doesn't even have to be perfect. And when you do finish making them, you have to watch this cringe-ass cutscene of your character biting the air as your Pokemon watch. The only thing sandwiches are good for are breeding eggs and shiny hunting. If you're just playing through the story, you don't need to breed Pokemon with optimal stats since these games are pretty easy. And shiny hunting is at its easiest when you complete the Pokedex, which is during endgame. Speaking of shiny hunting, it is so painfully tedious when you're hunting for them in the wild. I get that Game Freak wanted to make shiny hunting more skill-based by getting rid of the sparkling noise and having players skillfully identify shinies, but the problem is that some shinies are either too subtle or too small to notice. Like, look at these Pokemon. Black and white cartoons have more color contrast than this shit. And take a look at this. My tiny-ass Asian dick is bigger than most of these Pokemons. You'd have an easier time seeing microscopic organisms without a microscope than some of these Pokemon. Like, I literally can't see that shit for shit. But that's not the only thing that's hard to navigate. Navigating the map is so tedious. The map is way too big, and sometimes it's hard to know where you are on the map, and it's even worse if your Joy-Cons drift, because that shit will just keep zooming in and out like a male porn star. But that's not all. You don't even get markers in this game. All you have is this destination marker, so if there are multiple areas you want to visit or revisit, you can only do it one at a time. Having multiple markers would have been very useful for navigation, but nope. This little shitty flag is all we get. And it's so weird because Legends Arceus had multiple markers, a game that came out the same year as Scarlet and Violet. Speaking of Legends Arceus, one of the worst things about this game is that it took away some of the good shit that Legends Arceus had. In Legends Arceus, battles were fast-paced and the Pokemons hit like isekai trucks in terms of animation. In Scarlet and Violet, combat is slow as shit and Pokemons hit like fucking pussies. They're like butterfly kisses from your mom. And sadly, they also got rid of the catching mechanics. In Legends Arceus, there was so much depth to catching Pokemon. Aside from the traditional method of weakening Pokemon then catching them, you could throw balls from miles away, you could throw bait on the floor and lure them in, or you can stun them with items and strike them from behind. But in Scarlet and Violet, all you have is the traditional method. It just blows my mind that these games were made by the same company, released in the same year, and yet the newest game is somehow the downgraded version. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is how unfinished these games are in terms of graphics and frame rate. Part of these games feel like they're still stuck in the PS2 era. Like the Pokemon models look extremely clean, but when you walk a few feet away, they turn into low-res polygons and all the magic disappears. Same goes for the environments and landscapes. They look like assets that were copy and pasted from RuneScape. And sometimes the environments don't even render properly. And don't get me started on running. This game looks like it's always having a seizure. These modern Pokemon games can't even run at 60 frames per second, which is laughable beyond words. It's so bad that on rare occasions, my game crashed on me. Not once, but 4 times as of writing the script. I've never had that issue with any Pokemon game in my life. Heck, I've never had that issue with any game in my life. Again, this is coming from Pokemon, the most successful media franchise of all time. There's absolutely no excuse why these games should be in such a poor state. With that being said, I'm giving Pokemon Scarlet and Violet a 7 out of 10. I know that's a pretty high score for a game with glaring issues. Objectively speaking, these games should probably be a 4 or 6 out of 10, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy my time with these games. As I said before, the vast open world complements the traditional formula, making the journey feel more like an actual journey when you're exploring Paldea. At the same time, the issues that I covered definitely hold these games back significantly, especially the shitty frame rates and processing power. It's unbelievable that these games crash at all. Again, these games are made by the most successful media franchise of all time, and is backed up by Nintendo. How in the actual fuck is it even possible for these games to look and play so shitty? There's absolutely no excuse why these games should be in such a poor state. Like, I thought Africa was poor as shit, but that all changed when I played Scarlet and Violet. Like, fucking hell, man. Pokemon could be doing so much better than this, but instead they shit out these games for $60 a pop from their filthy, crusty anus. So in conclusion, even though these games are fun, they're not great. Pokemon is still only putting out the bare minimum. Anyways, that's the video. If you enjoyed it, maybe you should like and subscribe to the channel. Who knows, maybe you'll learn to love yourself. I'd see ya.